Hi, so 23rd of January 26, and this is the last part 3, on the subject of Mercury. And this is in answer to many questions over the past 6 months from viewers asking what data have my old books and dictionaries and technical book have on the subject of Mercury. So you'd have to watch part 1 and part 2 to catch up, because I'm going to go straight onto the next book. Part 1 and part 2 I have put in a playlist since TikTok doesn't really share the posts. And by the way, TikTok algorithm have not shared part 1 and part 2 as much as any of my other posts, probably because I'm very close to the truth and and I'm answering questions and challenging some things that are happening now in response to the questions that I was given. But looking at the documentation, looking at the old text from the 1800s and before, and looking at the current scene about the suppression of Mercury as the element Mercury and the reasons given for it, there are definitely a number of contradictions. There are many things that don't make sense, and so I do understand why people interested in that subject have asked me about it. And until I was asked, I never realized the depth or the breadth of the suppression of information on that topic. So that was a very big eye-opener for me. Thank you very much for that. So let's go straight on to the next books. All the books are listed in the description here. So I've listed everything, and most of them you can find on Internet Archive or Gutenberg.org. I've listed everything, so you can look at everything yourself and watch the previous post for the full, the full sequence. So now we go straight onto this one, Dictionary of Mechanics, and that's an 1880 dictionary by Edward H. Knight, and I've discussed that in a different post. It's quite a rare piece, that one, but I have found one of the volume in Internet Archives. So, and it has a Mercury section in it, but this is only just a small section, because this is actually a dictionary of mechanics. So it's not really under the heading of mechanics, but there is a section. And again, I will go through it quickly. It covers the same information as the Encyclopedia Britannica that I read in the last section, the last part. Covers the same point, the chemical numbers and so on. That the fact that mercury mixed with another metal is called amalgam. It also the locations. So the same mines of Amalden in Spain and Idria in what is now Slovenia, and a few other locations. So all the data matches. Different dates, different books, the data matches. It does specify here quicksilver has been mined. Now what's interesting here really, two things. Mercury is used to extract gold or silver from the earthy and baser metallic constituents of these ores. Now, the other books also confirm that. So mercury is a vital metal in extracting gold or silver. So you can imagine it is not going to disappear. Although, if you look it up, there are other methods used that can also extract gold and silver, including arsenic-based products, equally toxic, but somehow those ones are not suppressed, interestingly enough. So you can go down the rabbit holes on this, but because my channel has to do with psychiatry and modern psychology and how they destroy education, I'm trying to kind of keep on the main line. Although believe me, I'm very happy to go down those rabbit holes. But these are rabbit holes which actually, even though they're not strictly connected with psychiatry, there are rabbit holes that do express and do expose the level of suppression of knowledge. So that is very important, because that is a key element when we look at what's going on in society right now and the suppression of knowledge and the dumbing down of society. That is a big issue. Suppressing knowledge, hiding knowledge, making knowledge secret, so only a select few have the information and the others don't. So they can be controlled more easily, obviously. And it goes back all the way down to just reading and writing. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm back. Okay, so yeah. Now, so it goes on about the extraction. Now it says quicksilver, which is mercury. Quicksilver has been mined from time immemorial. which means a very, very, very long time. From time immemorial in Spain, at Amalden in the province of La Mancha. And here it refers to Dioscorides, who was a Greek doctor, a Greek army doctor. Dioscorides separated Mercury from cinnabar, so there's a record of that. And Pliny, as in Pliny the Elder, the Roman natural philosopher, who wrote many books on natural philosophy, Pliny states that 700,000 pounds of cinnabar were received yearly from that source. So this is from Spain. And that the Greeks received it from there as well 800 years previously to the date at which he wrote. And he wrote around AD 70. So there are records of mercury being extracted and used as far back as 800 before Christ. So we're looking at really 3,000 years easily. So don't tell me now that suddenly, oh, they've just discovered that mercury is toxic, because see my previous 2 parts, because it really shows that it was completely known before. And you have, certain forms of mercury, particularly the vapors, which are toxic, and other forms of mercury, when well handled, are very powerful for health and many other applications. Remember previous part 2, how mercury is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful antiseptic going, and can stop anthrax in its tracks. So can you imagine in biological warfare, and obviously anthrax has been used in biological warfare until very recently, not to say it's not going to be used again, but then mercury stops it. So that would be something useful to have if we're going to be attacked in some way. Anyway, then it goes on, the book then goes on, so it agrees with the timeline, like in the other books, it's been thousands of years. And it says, for detailed description of the process and apparatus, we must refer the reader to Yours Dictionary and Chemical Treatises, I can pronounce that, as the subject is not so clearly within the scope of this work. So let's go on to Yours Dictionary, okay, which I've got here, 1846. All right, so this is Dr. Yours Dictionary of Arts, Manufactures and Mines. Fascinating, and I have found it on Gutenberg.org, and there is a massive section on mercury, which is about 10 pages, and it's there so you can read it. Now, I'm only going to pick up some very interesting tidbits, because all the rest of the information is very similar to what is in the Encyclopedia Britannica, 1911, the one behind me, also available on archive.org, so you can read at your leisure and really examine. I'm not a chemist, and I'm not a metallurgist either, so a lot of the nomenclature and terminology, frankly, is not easy for me, because I've not studied it. I would have to do a full study of it, and they're not subject that I've studied, especially just basics in my engineering degree. Okay, but there are many people who will, it'll be easy reading for them. So I just want to make a point here. Right, mercury, quicksilver. So here, some very interesting information, again, about the quantity, thousands and thousands of pounds of this stuff, and how 3/4 of it was from Europe was also sent off to America when the Americas were discovered, interestingly enough. So there was a huge export going on here. Now, further down, it goes on about the geological locations where mercury is found. There's a whole description of that. But what is really interesting, actually, is this tiny bit here, where it talks about they are even sometimes accompanied with the remains of organic bodies, such as casts of fishes, fossil shells, silicified wood, and true coal. But what's interesting here is that you hear quite often that mercury is in fish, but then I start to wonder, it must be naturally in fish, because mercury is everywhere on the planet. It's an element of planet Earth. But it's interesting here that it talks about how it is also found in, you're looking at organic bodies, fossils, casts of fishes, fossil shells. So it's an interesting piece of information here. Now it goes on about were discovered. He goes on about how the Idria mine, which is where Slovenia is, were discovered in 1497. So we're looking at 500 years of mining. And it goes on here about how much has been mined, and yet barely anything has been touched in Spain as well as in that area. But there are other areas where mercury has been found, and I discussed that in the previous post. But it's also in here, so you can have a look. Now, there's some other very interesting things here. Pliny, so Pliny the Elder, this is 70 AD, has recorded two interesting facts. That the Greeks imported red cinnabar from Almaden 700 years before the Christian era. So cinnabar is the mercury ore, which we've discussed previously. And two, that Rome in his time annually received £700,000 from the same mines. And now, since 1827, they have produced 22,000 hundredweights. So I went onto Google to compare that measure, because I'm not used to hundredweights. And 22,000 hundredweights is over 1 million kilograms, which I thought was pretty amazing. It says since 1827, they have produced 22,000 hundredweights, so over 1 million kilograms of mercury every year, with a core of 700 miners and 200 smelters. So this is the Almaden mine in Spain, which is not open anymore. And it goes on about how rich that mine is. But now there's something really, really even more interesting here. It's about the people working there. And it says, with all that mining, they only pick up about 10% of the mercury, and the rest is wasted because of the methods used. We're wasting, you know, they just wasted and lost a lot of mercury. But despite that, that's the amount of mercury they could extract. Now, something very interesting, and I looked him up. There is a chap here called Monsieur Leplay. Frédéric Leplay, a French engineer, mining engineer specialist of the times. And you can look him up. He was an eminent mining engineer who published in a recent volume a lot of information. I mean, it's written in French there, so information about his trips to Almaden. But here's what it says. It says, okay, let me see, I've lost it. I can't believe I lost it because I prepared it. So he's going on about the people there. Here you go. So that's how I found it. Now, it's in French, but it's going on about the situation in Almaden, where the vapors are so potent. It is basically incredibly disastrous for the health of the workers. And it goes on there and it discusses that. So then there is an English discussion here. And he says the population of the miners of Almaden deserve the highest of interest. And then it says these victims of a deplorable mismanagement are described as being a laborious, simple-minded, virtuous race of beings who are thus condemned to breathe an atmosphere impregnated far and near with the fumes of a volatile poison, which the lessons of science, as I shall presently demonstrate, might readily repress, with the effect of not only protecting the health of the population, but of vastly augmenting the revenues of the state. So what he's saying here is, at the time, it was completely known, the dangers of mercury mining, the vapors, the disastrous consequences of the vapors on health, which is the same now. And he had a solution. There was a solution, and he's blaming the mismanagement for those wonderful people who were becoming very, very ill. And then later on in the book, a couple more things here, where it says that he feels the modes, this is Dr. Ure now, he's saying the modes practiced at Almaden and Idre are in greatest degree barbarous, which means incredibly barbaric, savage, cruel. And basically the way, the mechanism that they have was simply incredibly unhealthy and destructive, and there were better mechanisms. And this is interesting enough, where Dr. Ure says here, it says, he gives the pictures, an illustration, and it says, these figures here represent a cheap and powerful apparatus which I contrived at the request of the German Mines Company of London, and which is now mounted at Lenzburg near Obersmochel in the Bavarian Rhine-Kreis. I can't pronounce that. But what's interesting is you can look that up, and he proposed a solution that would save the health of the workers. So even then, we're looking at 1846 and earlier. There were people willing and ready to do the right thing, so you could mine mercury without the workers becoming ill. Isn't that amazing? And then here we have just a very quick note here. Encyclopedia Britannica in part 2 is much more thorough on the medicinal uses of mercury, but here there's just a quick note. It says quicksilver is a substance of paramount value in science. Its great density and its regular rate of expansion and contraction by increase and diminution of temperature give it the preference over all liquids for filling barometric and thermometric tubes. It goes on also about the use of mercury for collecting gases. So this is everywhere you can find that. And it goes on here about mercury being used a great deal in England as well. And then where's the health bit? It says it is the basis of many, it's very small writing, that's why it's a challenge. It is the basis of many very powerful medicines, at present probably too indiscriminately used in English society. So I think it was probably used a lot, probably not properly, and that might have caused some problem. But it is the basis of many very powerful medicines, and that was 1846. Then I'm mindful of the time. We have this book here, Elementary Lessons in Electricity and Magnetism, which I've already discussed, and a whole section here on electric amalgam. There's loads on mercury throughout the book, so this you can find on archive.org, and go on a search button and you can just find all the bits that got the mercury in. And this is another book, Elementary Electrical Engineering, and it has a lovely section there on mercury arc rectifier to turning AC alternating current to direct current. This is not online, unfortunately, but you can get copies of it. So here you go. I hope that answers all the questions. Sorry, I was fumbling a little bit there, struggling with the reading. But all the references are on the description here, and hopefully that should give all the answers, or enough for you to go and research and make up your own mind. And yes, thank you for everybody who asked. There is definitely something dodgy and more than meets the eye at what is happening right now with the suppression of mercury.